Everybody, welcome in this new episode of Juno Live. It's been a few weeks since the last time, and the reason why is because I was building the Google signIn, so finding a way to integrate that without compromising on our values and bringing that in your container. And so the idea is today to show you how you can implement similar pattern. We're gonna build that against mainnet production, because why not? And also because I still need to ship something in the emulator so that you can develop that locally. But yeah, that should do. Right, so if you have questions along the way, as always, ping me in the chat. I answer as I can or afterwards. Alright, so where do we start? Yeah, as I said, we want to develop against production. So first thing we're gonna do, we're gonna start a container satellites for our today's experimentation. So let's create one that we're gonna call Juno livestream Google Auth, doesn't matter. And we're gonna build an application. So I don't know if we talk about that, but just for the so that you know, basically when you create a website, your container starts with a configuration optimized for delivering assets on the web. When you select application, it starts with the configuration optimized with mixing everything, having assets and DB and so on and so on. But you can always switch between the two while you are developing. So here I'm just gonna pick this one because why not? Okay, and before I start the stream, I created like a sample app with the template, right? So I have it here in my browser, so everything is already set. Just to see the front page. So let's have it here, right? Localhost. We see that we have it here. And I think this one succeeded. So what we're gonna do, I take the satellite's ID and I go in my configuration and the Juno configuration, and here I put that as my production satellites, right? Okay. So what do we have? Here we have the standard things, and we want to implement Google, and in the template it just tells you to go to the documentation. But we don't want passkey and internet entity today, so I'm gonna remove those. So I will remove this one. Not that I have to do, but just to have something clean here, and we just want login with. Alright, so I will close that because, as I said, we develop against production, and I open the documentation. So I go to doc, authentication, and here I have Google. I've reworked all the chapters, so now that you have every provider one after the other. So blah 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 introduction. The flow, we're gonna test it, so I don't have to explain you the flow, but basically just like a normal flow. User sign in with Google, then Google verify the credential, they get back to the front end, and then the satellites verify everything is okay, and then it establishes the connection. If I really have to picture it quickly, just like, let's take this user here. So that's the app we build. There is a callback continue with Google, so the user clicks here. Then the user is redirected to sign in to the Google account. And then after that, yeah, what it does, it go back here, right? And then when it go back to the front end calls the satellites with a encrypted or with a JWT token, JSON Web Token, and the satellites verify that that particular JWT token was effectively signed by Google, and also verifies that it was effectively provided by a user. The same that basically here we pass a nonce, and here we assert that is the same nonce by comparing that the session and the salt works, blah blah blah, and then when everything works, I give back a session. So you see, lots of arrows. Alright, so first we want to have our credential. So what we do, we go to the Google Cloud Console. So I'm gonna go here to the API dashboard. Cool. Then I want to create a new project. So what I generally advise is to have multiple projects, like for example, one project for development and one project for prod, or you can have one, or you can have just one. No, actually, you can have just one project with 2 credentials. Yeah. Anyway, like what I want to convey is you should try to not use your production credential to develop locally and so on. Okay, so let's create a new project. I was here, so we're gonna create a project that we're gonna call Juno Live Google Auth, blah blah, an organization. Okay, and then we need to selection it. So here we're gonna selection it. All right. Then we need to configure the auth consent screen. So we go to credential. You see here it will ask me to configure the consent screen. So I go here and I do that. So app name, we call it Juno Live Demo. That's the email I'll use here. External. I put my email that I used here and I agree. Create. Okay. And then we are back. So now we go back to API and services. Credential. And we want to create credential of type auth client ID. And here we select web application. So here that's gonna be our production in that case. Live stream production, just a name, right? And we will come back to this afterwards, but or we do it right now? No, let's do it right now. So since the client ID that we will get is public, it means that basically anyone can snuff into an app and find that client ID. I mean, as soon as it's on the client side, it's public, right? So we need a security way to tell, yeah, but that client ID can only be used in that particular use case. And that particular use case is telling Google that when that client ID is used, the mechanism to go back to the caller app. This part here should only work for a special URL. So in our case here, we're gonna say that's our satellite URL, right? Sorry. Okay. But we want also to give an extra pass. And maybe we're gonna have like multiple providers at some point. So what we can do is we can give like this one, like saying, okay, when we go back there, the redirect URL should be auth gone back Google. All right, and I create it. Okay. At this point, the setup is ready. Again, it's really important to have an authorized redirect URL, authorized JavaScript, to have two different projects, one for prod, one for dev, or more. And here we're gonna take the client ID and we're gonna put that in our configuration. So I go in my Juno config. Actually I have two choices, but we're gonna do it like this. So I go here and I say authentication, and in the authentication I want Google, and you see here the client ID is mandatory, like that. So technically I could just configure it in the console, but the advantage of having it here is that when I'm gonna build my application or run my application, the JavaScript code will automatically inherit it, right? So that's really an advantage. And maybe we don't want to have that ID because right now we are working against Prod. We don't want to have it like when we do development. So what we can do is we can modify our configuration here. To use the mode here, and we can say something like, what was it? Yeah, that's nice. Okay, so if mode is production and only when production, then we want the configuration. This way, when I'm in development, I not gonna have it, right? Okay. Right. So now we have two parts. We have the front end part and the back end part, right? As I said, because we are using the plugin here, like we have, where is that? In Vite. We are using the Juno plugin, so the Juno plugin will automatically read our config and then we'll push that in as a process env. And we need to configure the backend. So either I have two options. One option is I go here in the console, in my authentication, in the setup, and here I enter the client ID, or I do it with the CLI. Since it's a bit more visual, let's do it like right now. We come back to the option later and we submit it. This way the satellite also know that client ID, which is important for the verification, right? Okay. Good. So we have done backend through the config, and now we can implement the sign-in. So I will go to the code, and in the code we have a button called login continue with Google. So we don't need that show modal because we're gonna implement it for real, right? So what do we want? We want the sign-in that comes from core. We're gonna put a function called login. I don't know, I don't have like a good name right now. And here we're gonna use it for our button. And here we do await sign in. Hoopla, sign in. And here we say we want Google. And as the option right now, the only method is redirect, but soon I will add fetchCM. But yeah, use redirect. And here you see the important part. We don't have to do the client ID, as I told you, it's automatically injected, but we need to add that particular redirect URL, which should match the URL we defined, this one, you see? So we Windows location origin, we're gonna get that part. So now we need to add this part here. That way when we are in production, Google will see redirect, this here matches that. And that's it for the login. We're gonna see the option afterwards. Now that we have the login, we need the other part, which is what happens when we come back. Okay, so that all that mumbo jumbo can happen. So what we need to do is we need to implement that route, and then when it hits, do something. So because it's a SvelteKit app, here I took SvelteKit because it's a bit faster for me. So we have a first route that is called auth. Then we have callback. Then we have Google, and in that one we want a page. Okay, page. And in that page we want to trigger this, right? And all the stuff that is required. So the Juno core library exposes a function to do that. So we import this part. And when the route is mounted, we just call the function. And here, just gonna write something like hold tight. Of course, like in a real application, I can show you afterwards. You do that a bit more. Yeah, you check various states and this kind of things. But the idea is that you just call that function without any parameter. And that's it. So let me check. We have created a project and a client ID at Google. We have specified the redirect URL. In our application, we have configured both the config and the authentication, so the satellites itself, and then we have implemented a sign-in button that call login and a redirect page that should do the rest. So first let's build to see if there is no error. Okay, so we need to deploy. So to deploy, I will do I want to deploy locally or do I want to do that in the CI? Yeah, let's do it locally. So I'm gonna create a profile just for the demo. This way I can remove that controller afterward, since we're gonna see it here. So Juno live set like this. no, and I will add it here. So that's our Juno Live, right? And I just want to control the satellites we created for today. All right, so if I go back here, now we are logged in, so we're gonna do Juno hosting deploy with that profile, and that should do the trick. All right. Technically, we can also develop against production, but yeah, let's go big. It's a small app too, so not too bad. Alright, so if I go back here and I take the URL, copy link, and I go here because here I'm logged in Gmail. So we have our app, right? And we're gonna continue with Google. So here it calls that sign in. You see that here we have the client ID that we have specified, and somewhere you see we find that redirect URL that is so important, and other parameter, but yeah. So let's sign in. All right, and here there is an issue. What's happening? So you see, like the okay, so that's on me maybe. The page does not exist? Of course. Wait. Did something wrong here? Why this stuff does not take? So I want /auth /callback/Google. Why? What did I do it wrong? Let me check. No. We want auth callback Google. Do I need like kind of to add a layout? Otherwise it doesn't work? No. Really? I know why. I know. Okay, that's my bad. So that has nothing to do with the implementation. Nice. Where was I? So we don't have it because here at the root I have a guard, you see? And yeah, so we're gonna do that. So we're gonna have app, and we're gonna have let's call it whatever, standalone, I don't know. And we're gonna put this here, I guess. And here we want, no, I want auth too. So here we're gonna have let's do a page, and in the page I guess so, we're gonna do this. That's nice. Okay, and on the contrary, in the main layout we remove this. So now here, is that broken? Oh, what? Why does it conflict? The slash left conflict with each other, come on. What? Oh, you're gonna love. It's because here I have a page. I have a page too here, so that should work. It should not be an issue. And then here I have the single standalone pages, right? So beautiful. Oh, fuck me. So what does it do if I do that? You're gonna love. I love SvelteKit. That was a good choice. So where was I? Okay, here we have this page, and now we have that. Okay, we are here. Okay, so that's good. So here we have a layout. Yeah, sorry, my bad. So that was a bit dumb. So here we want that. I did not saw that we had this one was conflicted with this one, not this one with this one. It's I'm a bit stupid. All right, and we don't have children. Okay, So now that's our all tight, and here I have the app. Okay. Let's deploy again. That's my bad. Yeah, the error message was the slash and slash app. The root. Yeah. Just noticed that my mic was not fully in. I hope the sound was good till here. Been a long time since I did the last Juno live stream. See that I lose like the preparation. Okay, so let's rewind. So we are here, call, and we come back to all tight. And now, because what's happening here? Refuse to execute some because it's my time, it's not executable. Strict my time, I check it. What? What? Oh yeah, but we don't care about this one. Ah, no. You know what? I forgot that I commented here. And actually, let's do a function because I forgot something. Yeah. So once we have signed in and have a session, we still need to do something. Is we need to go somewhere, because otherwise we're just gonna stay on that page forever. So we need to do a go to, and here go from the root, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna replace the state. This way it will clean up the URL, right? And the error comes from in satellites because I did not set up that part, which is not interesting for now. So we redeploy, and I will open this part so not forget this time. And here we gonna do that once we are live. All right, so let's try again. Interesting. So now we reach that point, but it fails because it's I don't know which satellite ID to call, and that happens because this is not finished. So we need a way to make this happen. So what I'm gonna do is the following. I will take this part here, which is not interesting for here, and I will create a main layout. Wow, let's even make that like really cute. So we're gonna create a script. And we're gonna call it satellite loader. We're gonna put an interface where we accept children. And we create something like let loading, which is a state true, right? And once it's loaded, we say loading false. And here we do if loading do nothing, and if not loading, then we render the children. Of course, in a real world app, you would probably do that a bit more gracefully, huh? Blah blah blah. And then in our layout here, where we have our children, footer does not have something particular, so here we do the satellite loader. This way, when this component will be mounted, actually it will be through the children, and in the satellites loader he will first do the satellites, and once it's loaded we can call the children. And we can even do that maybe more gracefully, just a bit. I think we can use the yeah, this pattern, for example, where you say no animation, and here, and this way we don't even need a state. Oh, what's that? Okay. There are other ways, like technically you can, if you want, I think, or you don't. No, maybe I can add some parameters if someone needed to have like that imperative. That would be possible. You just have to tell me, like, yeah. I find this kind of okay because we assume that the satellite is loaded once at the top, so it's kind of acceptable. But yeah, wait, no strong opinion, just tell me. All right, so let's do it again. A small animation would be nice here to see if something is happening or not. Oh, nice. So what happened? Okay, so actually it works out. It's just like the application that we are using, except to have like collection defined and this kind of thing. So we're just gonna put those, like having like a collection nodes in our small database, and having like a collection images in our storage. But if we look at here in the authentication, you see it worked out. So let's log out and log in again. Yeah, we are in here. If I enter something, I'm gonna see in the console here, you see like identifier MZY, and if I go here now, I have a note that is linked to that user, and if I sign in and or out and in again, then I have my my stuff, right? So yeah, sounds good. A bit bumpy, but yeah. So here are the takeaways of the implementation before we have a look to the option. So yeah, we had some fail-kit stuff to resolve because of the routing, but the things what was important is to have like a loader that loaded the satellite's configuration before we use the redirect function. You can also call it twice, but it just like it felt like the most straightforward way to do. And the sign-in, there weren't too much trouble there. It was just like calling the function sign-in, but it's important to provide the same redirect as the redirect that is configured in the Google console. And in the page here, we call the redirect once the satellite is mounted, and then we go for a redirect navigation. This way we don't have the redirect stuff in the URL. Right. So that's for the setup, and just have a look at the option maybe. So by default, the session duration is a day, because why not? So it means that your user would need to sign in again every day, right? So it's kind of like, I think, a trade-off for security and this kind of things. But if you want, you can push that to a week, 2 weeks, and the max limit is a month. Kind of I hard-coded that because I thought it was like make a meaningful max value, really big. If you change the duration, it only applies to the next sign-in. It doesn't apply for the users that are already signed in, right? Because every time they sign in, there is a session that is created, and that session has a fixed set times and so on, right? Then there is another thing that I can show you with another project. So let me check what I have here. Yeah, so let me put that back. Okay, so here I have a similar project. It's a test too. I'm gonna sign in. And here you see there is like a button that might or might not work. And that's a call to, I think, a ledger, just to get the balance or something like that, I think, or even just the metadata. Anyway. And you see it fails. And that's because by default, where is that documented? Here. By default, for security reason, the session, the identities that are generated, can just interact with the satellites that created those identities. I mean, kind of makes sense. Like, I think like if you sign in on Twitter, you don't expect to be signing in on Facebook as well. Kind of. That's kind of the logic and the security I have in mind. So if you want to allow other calls, what you can do is either you go and you say, there is no restriction, or you go to your setup and you say, I actually want a custom rules, and here you have to provide the satellites, of course, otherwise it can be a bit tricky, and you can list those that you want, like for example like this. So here I want this ID and this ID to be allowed. Of course it's the same as the session, so you have to, it applies on the next sign in. So now here I will sign out and sign in again. Right, and if I try, you see this time it worked out, right? And you can as well set no restriction, which is like call whatever you want. Okay, right, and those configuration here can be done in your Juno config too. So that means that here you can also go, and here I guess you gonna, is it here? Wait, yes, you have delegation, and here you can set the session duration, that's in nanoseconds, right? Or the allowed target. So we're not gonna do it, but just that you know. So here you can have nanoseconds and the allowed target. If you don't want any restriction, you set null, and if you want to have like a particular list, like here, you just put, I guess it should be pretty clear, and it's documented, so right. Okay. Before we finish, maybe I can show you the implementation, because what we have done here, we actually also have it on the console. You see here, I'm signed in, and so let's try out. I hope I don't have to open my password manager. So I can sign in with Google. Oh, great. And you see here, there is a small animation that tells me that is loading, and then blah blah blah, it does the stuff, and then I go back to my dashboard, and here I got the data, right? And likewise, if I go here, I also see those, and those information, you also get them in your app. So if we go back to our application here, so I will just remove that since we don't use it. So we have the page, and in the page we have the table. So let's have a look, 2 seconds. So here we have example, explore these things, and that's the auth, that's the entries, I guess in table. Yes, here. So we're gonna do something like that. I will create a component user. All right. and I will put it here. So you know we inherit the with the where is that, with the auth here, right? We have a user store, and that comes from Juno, right? So we get a user store here. So in our user here, we can put like something like this. So that's the user, huh? Okay. So the user can be signed in with internet identity, with web key, with Google, you don't know with what. So I provide, or there is a callback that let us know if it's a Google user. So let's say Google user, and we're gonna do derived. Okay, so that's really bad AI. And here we're gonna do is Google user, and that's a function that comes from the Juno build core. And here we put the do we have that? No. So, and this is type as okay. So if the not undefined and not null, and it's a Google user, then we return it, otherwise null. And this then allows us to have like the full typing on the user. This means that here, let's add a P, turquoise, no, 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 let's do just something like that. And here we're gonna do if there. So here the Google user, and you see here now if I go to the data provider data, then it's already typed. I already have like all the email and so on and so on. I don't have to add some if to check if it's Google or not. All right. So if we deploy that, and by the way, I added is Google user, but there is also a is web auth user. So if you implement a web auth, you can also assert this way. It's kind of nice this way. You don't have undefined on provider data and this kind of things, or add a if and check and stuff. Almost there. All right, so you see here we have our Google user is defined, so we provide the metadata. And yeah, maybe one last thing is, as I told you, in the redirect you might want to have that a bit more clean. So for example, what I do is in the console I check if the user is already signed in, and if it's already signed in, then I show the the user, like if I go here to auth, callback, Google, you see here, you are already signed in. So I handle those facts that I don't want to call the backend if it's already signed in and this kind of things. And otherwise, you add a bit of animation where you display a message according various states and this kind of things. But at the end of the day, it's the same. It's like call the redirect and go to. Voila. So I hope that the explanation was enough clear and the document help. If you have any question, you reach out. Always happy to help to build that. Likewise, if you have technical question about how it works more in detail, just ask. Happy to help. So thanks for having joined this call and enjoy your week. Bye-bye.